are we just taping this or what?
Yeah, we're just gonna tape it because it's oddly hard to get it all coordinated with like every coach in our area, and that might be kind of a technical disaster. So
No,
I
I mean,
felt like we could.
yeah, I'm glad people are at least are interested in open water, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of imagine there might be a big surge in interest after this break with the pool, so that could be the silver lining for, I don't know, the sport.
Yeah, definitely.
But we have, I felt like we had a lot of people come up with questions because it is so new for a lot of people, and this seemed like a really good way and a really good expert to give us a little guidance and just a little information, because I think that it's in your mind. You think, oh, I'll just go out to the lake and off we go. But I think that when people start thinking about it, it's a little bit more than that. And then the kids and parents have a lot of questions too. So we compiled some questions that I think are probably pretty common for a lot of people, coaches and swimmers, and then hopefully we can give them a little bit of direction so there's not accidents or just it's an unpleasant experience when it didn't have to be or something like that.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of why I wanted Bryce to be at least in communication with you and posting some of the details about safety with USA Swimming, because I know they have a lot of guidelines that, I'm not always the expert on all the safety guidelines, like rules for a race, yes, or training, or, from the performance end or training end, like that's where I get excited. So,
Yeah.
So that's good. And I'm happy to share experiences or, I obviously have a ton of stories.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, we shared the stuff that Bryce gave out, which is really helpful. I think that the swimmers' questions are, for a lot of swimmers, this is their first time, and, everyone went out and bought wetsuits and, but there are some kids I think who are hesitant because, they swim the 50 free or something. And then, can they benefit from open water is sort of their thing.
Yeah. Okay.
Do you have any advice for the kids who, I mean, I personally believe that there's benefit in swimming, obviously events that you don't swim and environments that you don't normally do. But, how can we help the kids understand that maybe, just because you swim the 50 wouldn't, you could still get some benefit from getting out into a lake or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think one thing, if you do train open water, you do a session open water, the benefit for anyone that doesn't want to swim distance is that you get to that pool and it looks a lot shorter than what you just swam in. In 2005, actually in Montreal, we did a training camp before World Championships, and we swam in open water straight for a week. And I was, that's the first time I'd been on a coaching staff, World Championship staff, or anything. And I was really worried for my athlete because I thought, this is going to ruin everything. Like all we're doing is open water training. And then we showed up to the pool competition for Montreal. And I'm telling you, the 50-meter pool looked so short. And like our first practice in that pool, the kids were flying. So, of course, I do think it has benefit. I think it's a different stimulus. With our college team at USC, we would sometimes take out the lane lines. And if you have a 50-meter pool, you're swimming the four corners. And, of course, we have them warm up a little bit. And then we would go in heats. And so, you kind of pair like your sprinters together with maybe 4 or 5 guys. And we did separate gender. So we did the men together and the women together. But, if you send them out just one loop, I mean, that's 150. And you would see an effort from a 5,200 butterflyer for the women that would work really hard for a minute and 20 seconds just to race the other people. So, I think it can be good from that aspect. Not everybody likes the contact, but it doesn't all have to be about contact,
Right.
I think it just kind of keeps things in perspective. And it's a different challenge, and some people are going to like it and some people are not. But that being said, if that's your only opportunity to get in the water and train, I mean, you can go very easy. Like some of the sets we'll do take 20 strokes easy and then 10 strokes fast. And sometimes all you get to do is focus on maybe your distance per stroke, without having a coach looking at you on the side of the deck. There's no stopwatch. So people that are afraid of always being timed, that's another benefit. So I think yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of training, can you maybe describe some, obviously like the athletes you're working with are the best of the best in open water, but sort of some ideas of how you can train some kids. It's probably a little bit related to the environment, but I think that some people are think like, oh, you just swim out to the buoy and then come back, or and then I think some kids will think that sounds really boring. I know that there are actual open water workouts that people do, but we pool coaches are not always aware of what those are.
Sure. Yep. And it takes some time to kind of get creative and get thinking. We'll get out in open water. I think one of the things that I do feel like is important is communicating what you want kind of before you go out in the water, because I remember early on, everyone's excited getting in the lake or getting in the river, the ocean. And then as a coach, you're sitting there and you're like, oh, wait, I didn't even tell anybody what I wanted. And then everybody's gone and you lose the chance to communicate with them. So, training in open water, I guess, I think in a way it's almost similar to the pool. Like we'll warm up with a 400 reverse IM, and, you just count on the kids to kind of take it on themselves to think like, okay, now I'm swimming about 100 freestyle. Now I'm going to go into breaststroke. Now backstroke's a little hard if everyone's in a group, but you can say go 400 IM, and then just in their mind, they're probably thinking, oh, I swam for a minute, but you have a stopwatch, like, oh, that was only 30 seconds. So it kind of helps like give the kids a perspective that's different than just counting the laps in a pool. So I actually had a coach text me and say, I want to send a kid out open water. Can you give me a workout? And so I wrote down exactly what I told them, which was like 10-minute warm up, kick, drill, scull, swim, and just 10 minutes, you have your stopwatch going, that's it. Then you stop. If you have a whistle, you can kind of communicate that way. And then I said 2 minutes of like speed play. So, and that could be anything. It could be, 10 strokes fast, 10 strokes easy, 10 strokes build, 10 strokes fast. And then I said a 4-minute IM, and then a 6-minute swim, which you would maybe descend by 2 minutes. And if you have a system where you blow the whistle every 2 minutes, then they pick up their speed and then pick up their speed. So you're not necessarily tracking it, but it's giving you something a little bit measurable. And then an 8-minute negative split. So that may be a situation where you don't have buoys, but you do have a watch, and I think a lot of times you're surprised at how quickly or how slowly the time goes by. Again, it's one of the things where you get to communicate with your athlete afterwards. So after 2 minutes, you're talking to them. After 4 minutes of an IM, you're talking. They're telling you, I just swam through that seaweed. After 6 minutes, it just offers a dialogue that I think is different than the pool. And so that's what I've always enjoyed about it. Then I said to do that in reverse. So then 8 minutes, negative split, 6 minutes, descend by 200s, a 400 IM faster than the first one, and then finish with a 200 really fast, which would be 2 minutes, some things like 20 strokes breathing only to the right, 20 strokes breathing only to the left, and maybe 60 strokes breathing however you want. So then they're more focused on the strokes that they're taking, and they kind of forget how far they're going. So those are like open water things, I guess. And then there's creative drills as far as open water racing, which you can do, kind of 3 kids in the front line and then 2 kids behind them. And the 2 in the back row have to figure out how to get in front, whether it's swimming around, all those things. It's a learning process. And as a coach, you kind of figure it out as you go along. And I think you can't be afraid to be like, oh no, we're trying this, and maybe it works and maybe it doesn't. But I've always found to say, I don't know, rather than acting like when you don't. Because the kids will have on a watch and they'll be like, no, that was So I've tried to trick them, and they're usually smarter than I am. So I don't know if that's helpful for an open water, training session. And I mean, it could be anything. In Long Beach, there was a series of buoys, and it would be like one buoy easy, one buoy hard, and I think we measured, it was about 800. And one day we did 5 of those. Oh, it's 5 800s. An important thing to remember, I think, is there's no walls. So what feels like an hour training is probably more like an hour and a half. When kids stop and talk to you and hang on your kayak or paddleboard or tread water, obviously that stops the overall time, but there's still mental energy that's expended that's different
Mm-hmm.
than in a pool.
Which brings me to, what do you have an idea? And obviously, again, like the athletes you're working with are higher level experience open water swimmers, but, like to me, it seems like maybe don't jump into, our practices, let's say, are 2 hours, like maybe don't jump into 2 hours of open water. It's not a 1-for-1 trade. Is that accurate?
Yes, I would say even with the world championship level athletes or the national team level athletes, very rarely, if we go to an open water swim, is it 2 hours. It's, and then I think it all, it does depend on what level you are. And some kids love Eva Fabian, Alex Meyer. They loved going out for lake swims, and they could swim for 2 hours easy, but that's not everybody. And that's another thing, is kind of getting to know your athlete and getting to understand how far you can push them, because you don't want to lose them if there is some interest. And, I really think that's one of the things that I've learned to kind of let go, is just trying to track everything so specifically when you're training open water. I mean, there's energy and effort getting there. There's the stress of something new, and then you're putting on sunblock or Vaseline, or, for new people, it is all a different challenge. And so you, at the end of the day, you want kids to be successful, and you want them to have fun.
Yeah. We've had a couple, there are been kids that have gone out already that I've heard on their own, kind of with their parents. We're still at stay-at-home order, so we're not going out in groups. But I imagine that will change as things happen. Like, is there a good, in your personal experience, like a good number of kids that works well? And then, obviously people have big squads and club teams. I can't really envision a team all going out at once. That sounds like a zoo, but there must be kind of a sweet spot with coach to swimmer, kind of, it works and then it doesn't work.
Yes, I think it depends on the level of the athlete, how much experience they have. Certainly you don't want to be in, you don't want to find yourself where 1 or 2 kids, if you're one coach with 10 to 15 kids and you're out on the water with them, and then 2 need to come in. Like, what do? Do you leave the 13 that are out in the water and bring the other 2 in? You need to make sure you have someone that's on shore, or at least have a communication, the method, that you've talked about before, what you're going to do. And, again, I think for the younger athletes, 8, 9, 10, like, you just want it to be a good experience. You just want them to get comfortable swimming out, not knowing what's underneath them. I mean, it's as simple as that. And they're going to put their toes in, then they're going to go a little further, then they're going to go a little bit further. And, we've done different things. Sometimes maybe you have someone that's with a front group, and then a coach that's in the back it can stay kind of with the stragglers. And again, you just have to communicate what you want ahead of time. So you can adjust on the fly, obviously, but you just want to have a signal where everybody needs to come back to this kayak, or touch base here. Don't go too far here. So I think it's important to really explain what you want ahead of time, and then also be able to adjust on the fly.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. I can picture, like, really being an enthusiastic coach wanting to really push their kids. And it seems like, you should take some caution with that, especially if you really don't know the capacity of your kid in an open water. Even if they're a great miler in the pool, doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be, just cranking it out in open water.
Yeah,
Uh,
totally. And I think they just have to become more and more comfortable. And it's like you could, if you see maybe 2 to 3 kids that are starting to like they have the hang of it and they're more comfortable. Maybe you stop the group and you say, listen, you four, I want you to stay together. And maybe you put fins on 2 of the kids that maybe aren't as fast, but you kind of make one person be the leader. And then it's like, listen, don't get ahead of this person. You guys got to stay together. You know, stay within touch, within reach of each other. Um, because they're going to stop, and they're kids. You can tell them to go, but they're going to stop and talk or see a dolphin or, get scared. They're going to swim over something, a shadow. But, they all kind of have to take care of each other. And so I think that's also an important lesson in swimming in groups. And so you're right. You can send a couple, maybe a little more advanced, but you definitely want to stay around with the kids that maybe aren't quite as comfortable and are still learning as they go. They don't know what they can do. I mean, I would say even for like even Haley's finished a race and be like, I held back. Like I could have done more. So it takes time.
yeah. Have you found that any of the national athletes are still shaken by different environments, or are they pretty comfortable?
I think the thing with open water is that there's so many variables and you just can't control them. So, one of the things I was thinking about is sighting, and your sighting is going to be different with if you're in flat water versus in the ocean. When there's chop, you're going to be sighting a lot more than a lake. You can probably take 10 to 15 strokes and then look for something, and a stationary object usually is what you want. But with the ocean, you're going to want to breathe at the top of the swell. And so, I think that certain kids have their favorite conditions that they want to race in. But that's the fun thing with open water. The FINA races is like, they're all different conditions, but your competition's always going to be different. Conditions are going to change throughout a race even. So kind of have to learn how to manage your energy and adjust. And when that there's a current, maybe you ride it, and then you want to draft or open it up and just go, depending on how you feel good. And it's just learning. It's a new skill.
Yeah. When you're out with your swimmers, are you focused on how fast they're going? Like I know with like GPS and all of that, you can have a rough idea. Obviously, environment plays a huge role in that. But is that a main focus that coaches should be worried about or concerned about? Distance and time, or having a positive experience and then trying to push it in some ways. I don't know.
I think it's positive experience the first time. As a coach, if you're in a kayak or stand-up paddleboard, I know I'm like, oh my God, the first time I'm worried about myself, like, or not tipping over. I'm not even watching the swimmers, like, oh, how do I look? Like, oh, great. So I think over time as well, you start to notice their tempo, you start to notice their stroke. A lot of times it does change. Like, you can see a kid stroke in open water, and then you take them to the pool, and I know pool's not available right now, but all of a sudden maybe their stroke's a little bit longer, and the distance per stroke you were looking for, now you're finding it because open water has opened it up. Because there's not you're not seeing a wall all the time. They're not getting short when they see the flags. There's no awareness. And so I'd say tempo, that's one of the things that I watch. If I'm watching 20 strokes fast, 20 strokes easy, it's like you can see the tempo change. And I think too, it's just visually like noticing, is your athlete getting more tired? Do they need to stop for a Gatorade or water, which, usually you have a water bottle in your kayak or stand up, wherever if we go out for over an hour swim, we generally have some type of hydration, names on water bottles or whatever it is. But, you start to sense how the athlete feels. Their heart rate is going to go up if the water's cold, because they're stressed, like freaking out. If it's warm, they're going to roll over on their back and get a little more air. And I think it's overall, you want the first couple experiences to just be really comfortable. You want them to feel like, okay, if they're stress swimming freestyle, swim some breaststroke, because you get to breathe all the time, and it kind of forces you to get into a breathing pattern. So you're regulating your breathing. which is important. So
Yeah, I think that's a good advice. Do you like, technically speaking, I think that the sighting and the breathing is a little bit different in open water. Do you have any advice on either of those? Should they be breathing to both sides? What is good advice for sighting? Obviously, different environments are going to be a little bit different, but you know.
yeah. One of the drills we do for just sighting when we do maybe an early camp for like a select camp we've done is, they take the goggles off and close their eyes, and you just tell them to swim for about 20 strokes, 20, 30 strokes. And you see which, do they have a tendency to go one direction or another? And it's really interesting. And they love that because it's like, oh, I ended up way over here. Some kids are dead on, which means their stroke is pretty balanced. And so, that's always kind of fun to do. And then you get a chance to really see which, what side is stronger. Where are you going to go if you're not sighting and you're not able to look? And when you are swimming, whether it's ocean or flat water, you're going to look for the buoy. You want to kind of lift your head up and then into your stroke. I think if you're at a really competitive race, then you're going to learn what you need to do, and when you need to do it for kids that are just starting out. Again, like I said, you do want to be comfortable breathing on both sides. And that's why sometimes I like breathe only to the right, breathe only to the left, because you have to be aware of your surroundings. And the kids that excel at open water are usually really observant, and they're able to know this person was on this side of me and now they're over here, or now I'm this far from that athlete. Like, are they on course or am I off course? So, constantly checking in. And so I think probably the same as in pool swimming, where some coaches do breathing every 3, 5, 7 to just be comfortable. But then when you race, it's like, just do whatever you want.
Right. I imagine that there are some swimmers who have really, really good open water IQ, so to speak, with ability to not necessarily swim straight, but choose probably the best
Best.
line.
Yep. They know the right people to follow. They know if they're on someone's toes. You don't even have to sight. I mean, to be honest, if you're in a race and you're right on somebody's hip or on their feet, is it worth like going the right way or just drafting and saving your energy? And a lot of times that's what happens, so that comes with experience. Sure.
Which speaking of drafting, should that be incorporated into training? Like, obviously, if there are kids together, that kind of naturally happens. It naturally happens in the pool. Should coaches be trying to avoid that or capitalize on it? Or
I think you can create, you can kind of, you can see what type of characteristic your athletes have. There's going to be some people that want to get away from everybody, that don't even want to touch anyone. Then there's going to be some that, they want that contact, and they're, going to be swimming all over and making a ton of splash. And again, you're going to learn a lot about your athletes through this. And, that's why if you're a new coach into it, it's like, you get a chance to really learn with your athlete and talk about it. Oh, what were you trying to do here? Why did you do this? And so stopping periodically, in any length of swim to just talk about what's happening or what's going on. And a lot of times as a coach, you can learn from your athletes too. You're like, oh, because you can't catch everything. You want to have your eyes on everyone, but you're not going to catch everything. There's another kind of game that we played, which is leapfrog. So, the kids are maybe 5 in a row. You can kind of assign different groups. But the kid in the back has to work his way up to the front. So, they are working so hard to get past all those athletes. And some of them are swimming right alongside. And then some of them are like way out, making it way harder. Maybe they never catch that person, but you don't want to make that too long because they'll take forever. But then once they get to the front, they're tired, so they slow down. So then, lots of different things like that. Depending on the level of athlete, like I might have some of the slower kids start first, and then you give them a 10-second lead, and then you tell the next kid to go and have them catch that group. There are a lot of interesting things, and I'm sure coaches can be creative and kind of come up with what they want to do. The drafting at the highest level, yeah, it's important. You can even kind of see it's almost like the cycling where you can see, where the pack and the athletes that aren't working it hard and they're not having to sight and they're not having to kick. So that will come with the racing aspect. But for just getting out and practicing, I think there's just a lot of creativity that's out there and coaches can kind of figure it out.
So it sounds like the coaches should be stopping somewhat, especially in the beginning. They should be stopping and communicating. It sounds like communication is a big part. Probably even
For
when they're
me, yeah, for me, I do believe if you're new to it or just trying something, and eventually, obviously, you can go to a 12-minute swim or to the buoy and back. But I think until you have confidence in your athletes, and you want to just make sure that they're not heading out another direction, again, it's like parenting. You just figure it out as you go along. And the first one, you're probably really worried. And I'm probably not as worried now, but
yeah. I think, when I think about it, I'm like, oh, the kids it should really be a positive experience. It's not about, initially about like really challenging them. Probably just the new environment is challenging enough. But I also know that people feel cooped up. And so it's sort of just a good reminder to, you don't have to be going, 25K, out of the gates, right?
not at all. And, I think even too, sometimes I just come up with things. It's like if you do if you want a kick set of 1,000, right? Let's say you have a 20 meters in your head that looks about, because if you know how far your athlete's going, you can kind of figure that out, or even use it 30 seconds for a 25. You kind of see how far they go. So you can kind of pinpoint two different areas, and maybe you say we're going to go 20 times, and you're going to kick down easy, and then you're going to kick back fast. Or you're going to go easy arms but fast legs down, and then you're going to go fast arms, easy legs back. So I think you can really think outside the box. That while they're talking to you in the water, you can have them be vertical kicking, hands on their heads, or all different things. If the water's deep enough, you can even still work on fast flip turns, or you can go streamline kick in the air. So yeah, I don't really ever use equipment like pull buoys or paddles out in open water. Some I've seen kids on the national team whose coaches have said pull 1,000, but I generally don't bring equipment like that.
Mm-hmm. But you do mix in
spins for sure.
Mm-hmm. But you do mix in stroke and kick and that kind of stuff. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, sculling. You can scull with your head up. You can scull just to have an awareness of what's around you, and you can let different athletes, you're going to pick the next 5 minutes, and then you're going to pick what's the next 4 minutes, or different things like that kind of empower them as well.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. I don't know, is there anything that you can think of that we're missing that that would be important for new coaches or new athletes that are really eager?
No, I think people ask me if I swam open water. It's like, no, I never. I just got experience from working with an athlete that was really good, and I took an opportunity to learn a lot. So I asked a lot of questions. I researched, I talked to people, worked with my athlete to figure out, what are we going to do here? Is this going to take away from the pool? Because I think that's another thing. People are afraid that any open water swimming is going to take away from pool. And I really think they can complement each other. When in the last couple of years, or depending on your athlete, I would say we focus more on training in the pool and then racing open water. But certainly you have to kind of get to that point. I know Haley started at Sierra Marlins, and they did some lake swims every Saturday morning. Now, I don't know that she ever thought she'd ever be an open water swimmer, but it at least exposed her to having to swim without a wall, kind of getting out into the open water. I just think you're going to as coaches are going to learn from their athletes, and it's just important to get as much knowledge as you can. And I think every athlete is different. So obviously you want to have a guideline. You want to get the kids to buy into what you're doing. So you want to make it at first fun and positive, and safe. And then you can kind of test the waters and go a little bit, go a little bit more, go a little bit more. So
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine that it might be a harder sell if all the pools were open, but it might be an easier sell now because, it might be the only option to swim. So, you
and
know,
then I even think like people that don't, maybe they like it after this, but if you're trying to incorporate it into pool training when everybody does get back, I mean, there's still sets that you can do in a pool that you could tell someone that really likes open water, like, well, you're going to focus on this. That makes them feel like you're creating something for them. So if it's 500s, you can say the first 100 and the last 100 is really fast. So you're going to settle into an easy pace in the middle, because the start of a race, it's fast. You want to get, a good position in the pack, and then you're always going to finish fast. So things like that. I like long course. I like 75s and 125s, or even 25s, because you have to start from the middle of the pool. You don't get a wall. You can start with your head down and whistle, and then the kids have to take off. We used to do this set called like pacers. And if you have 4 or 5 lanes across, you kind of rotate through who gets to be the leader that 100. And whenever they want to take off and go fast, they can, but they get to decide. And everybody that's swimming next to them has to sit, everybody stays together. But then when they take off, everybody's got to go. So it sort of, I guess, teaches you how to be aware of what's going on. And yeah, it's a change. It mixes things up. So I think it can be a benefit to anyone, for a sprinter to say, I don't want to do this. We were in Hawaii last training camp, and 6 guys got in trouble. So they had to have a practice on New Year's Day. And I was the coach that drew the short straw and had to take them to the pool. So we go to the pool and it was closed. I'm like, these guys are in trouble. No way. What am I going to do? I can't let them get off. So we went to the beach, and I talked to the lifeguard there, because I kind of found a spot that I wasn't comfortable with. And the lifeguard told me tons of information, like this coral is here. Be careful of the rocks here. It's about 800 meters down. So also that, just another tip is, like, if there's lifeguards out where you're swimming, they're the experts. So ask the lifeguard, what do they know about this area? But anyway, I created, an hour and a half practice for guys that would never, they're sprinters. And I mean, I think they had fun just because they knew it was a different stimulus, and I just had fun doing something different. So I think it's how you present it too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes total sense. I mean, I'm hopeful that, that maybe there's a new way, maybe people who wouldn't have picked it up get into it now and then really end up, liking it and excelling. We don't have a lot of race opportunities here in Oregon for sure. And, even for age groupers, it is certainly limited, but, I don't know if you have advice for the kids who want to race.
Yeah, I think that there needs to be just more education for officials and for people hosting races. And, they're as the sport is growing, we do need to provide more opportunities to race in the LSCs. But that being said, I think, North Carolina is one of the best ones, in Ohio. And so I think, reaching out to any of those people and finding out, like, what do you do? How do you come up with a select team or an inter squad type event? But there's other LSCs that I think are doing a really good job that everybody could learn from.
Yeah.
And a lot of it depends on geography and weather. I mean, it is definitely a challenge. And I think that, though, that's not an excuse. And there are other countries that their junior kids are really good, and they do 3,000s for time, and they do 5,000s for time in the pool. And I don't think the US has really adopted that method. And that's just what other federations, other countries are doing. And I don't know that we have to do that, but you want it to be a good experience.
Yeah. Well, I don't have any other questions. I really appreciate this. I'm hopeful that it's helpful to everyone. It was certainly helpful to me. So that's awesome.
And if you get more questions, if you want to email me, and then I can respond and you can send them out,
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, I don't want to keep you from whatever exciting thing you have on the docket for today.
Well, USC has their graduation, so we're gonna do like a little thing for all the seniors.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I always forget since I'm not in college that, like the college graduations are profoundly adjusted. I know the high schools are because we have high school seniors, but
Yeah,
college is huge. I don't know. I don't know how they would do that, but obviously they're doing it.
we're figuring it out a way. I don't know. It's strange times.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I really appreciate this. If I have any other questions, I'll shoot you an email.
Yeah, that sounds great. Thank you, Emily.
Yeah, perfect. Let me this.